Special, Chapter 3. I was speeding towards the moon at 7 miles per second, and it was everything I had ever dreamed. I can't wait for you all to see this, I said over the radio. I was looking out my window as the earth grew smaller and smaller. What does the universe look like? Asked Skunk. He had been obsessed with the universe since I met him. I couldn't wait until he could see it for himself. It looks beautiful. The infinite darkness covers you, but somehow feels liberating because of the tiny particles of light that still exist in the vastness. Wow, said Skunk. Bob, you are getting too far away. You need to head back. Come on, Bigfoot. I know I can make it to the moon. This was only supposed to be a test run. We don't know what will happen if you engage the last engine. You need that to enter back into Earth's atmosphere, said Bigfoot. I can do it, Bigfoot. No, come back now. This was just a test, Bob. You don't have enough fuel. Head back and we can try again tomorrow. He always thinks he knows what is best. If I had heard that from Karen, maybe I would reconsider it, but not from Bigfoot. He is always telling us what to do. He thinks he is the leader of our group, but I never agreed to that. I had already decided that I was going to pretend I had lost them on the radio. They were on Earth and I was in space. No one would be the wiser. They would be so proud when I made it to the moon. Bob, did you hear me? You need to turn around and head home. Oh, I think you're breaking up. Psh, I said. Bob, are you there? Bob. I heard the worry in his voice, but I needed to know what would happen if I pushed the red button and engaged my last engine. Could I make it to the moon? Could I beat NASA? I pushed the button and felt the ship jump forward. I was speeding out of control. The spaceship was going too fast. I pushed the red button again, but nothing happened. Bigfoot, I need you. I'm scared. Pushing the red button was a mistake. Bigfoot! I was shouting. I knew I needed to calm myself down. If I could just talk to him, we could figure something out. But the radio wasn't actually working now. Had they turned it off? I turned it on and off several times. Bigfoot, come in. This is Bob. But I heard no reply. Don't freak out. Don't freak out, I said. I looked out the window into space. The stars were zooming by. I didn't know where I was going to end up. Did I have enough oxygen? Enough food? Was I going to land on the moon? Oh no. What if I don't land anywhere and drift out in space forever? I should have thought this through before I decided to push the button. I just wanted to show Bigfoot I could do this and that he wasn't the only leader on our team. I tried to stay positive and thought maybe the astronauts from NASA would help me get home, and then I could make friends with them and the gang would be so happy from all I learned that they would forgive me. That thought made me feel better. I tried to look at the guidance system and see where it projected I would land. I could probably figure out where I might land. I looked at the calculations Karen had put into the system. I did some quick math in my head and stood up in the ship and hit my head. I'm going to land on Mars at this rate. I felt my heart speed up. NASA wasn't going to help me get home. They hadn't even landed on the moon yet. I took a deep breath. What would Captain Bert do? He would remain calm, and then he would try to fix his radio so he could communicate with his team and they could rescue him. I opened the control panel and started looking at the radio wire. Nothing seemed wrong. No wires were split. I sat in the captain's seat and thought about it for a minute. I looked out the window and I noticed that one of my radio antenna was missing. Not the antenna. I can't use the radio without it. I was going to have to give Karen notes on the antenna placement. It must not have been able to withstand the G-force. I started searching the spaceship for a spare or something I could use in place for it. I came up with nothing. Another note for Karen. Make sure to pack backups for everything. My spaceship continued to hurtle through space at an alarming rate. It wasn't long until I landed on Mars. It was a great landing that I wish everyone could have seen. I didn't dent the ship at all. I just hovered over the ground gracefully like a bird. Bigfoot would have been proud. I searched the ship for food supplies. I found some seeds. Most of them were potatoes. These would come in handy. I looked outside to see a barren landscape. It was nothing but sand and large mountains. I put on my spacesuit and decided to explore the surrounding area. I didn't have much oxygen, so I needed to be strategic about my exploration. I knew I couldn't live in the spaceship forever, so I looked for shelter. I immediately set off towards the mountains. Mountains usually meant caves, and as a Bigfoot, my instincts told me that that was the ideal place to seek shelter. Once I started walking, the mountains were further away than they first appeared. By the time I was at the base of the cave, I was almost out of oxygen. I quickly went into the cave and looked around. I needed to assess my surroundings. It looked like the cave had everything I needed. It had enough space for me to move around comfortably, maintain a food supply, and stay properly protected from any weather that Mars may produce. I headed towards the exit. I needed to get back to the ship. I took a step and felt lightheaded. Oh no, I had run out of oxygen sooner than expected. I hadn't calculated the distance correctly. I started to sway back and forth. This was not good. I was going down. Was this how it ended? Is this how my friends would find me as a skeleton in a spacesuit? I crashed to the cave floor and cracked my helmet on a rock. I could feel the air come pouring into my suit. This was the end. Goodbye, cruel world. But wait, it was air that was coming in, and there was moisture on my face. Could it be? Did I discover water in this cave and air? I took another deep breath and let the oxygen penetrate my brain so I could think clearly. I laid there and took my helmet off. I looked to the side, and bubbling up on the ground was a small wellspring. Never had water and oxygen been so wonderful in my life. I crawled over to the spring and scooped the water in my hands. It tasted as clean as the water in the village. This was amazing. I had a water source. I could plant the potato seeds I had. Things were looking up. I knew my friends would come for me eventually. It was a waiting game, and now I knew I could win. I have been scratching tally marks into the cave wall to keep track of how long I have been on Mars. I have 7 tally marks. On day 1, I fixed my helmet that I cracked while exploring the cave. I found the mud made a hard enough barrier to keep the oxygen inside my helmet. As soon as the helmet was fixed, I went back to the ship to get whatever supplies I could gather. I decided to take parts of the hull and use them as my garden beds. I needed to start my garden immediately. I also took whatever tools I found because you never know what might come in handy on a deserted planet. Day 2. I made the garden bed and planted the seeds. I planted potato seeds, and I found some corn snacks and a mango that I also planted. I'm not sure if they will germinate, but I am hoping luck is on my side. Day 3. I built an irrigation system with some of the plastic tubing from the ship for the potatoes. So far, they are my only food source, so I am doing all that I can to ensure that they make it. Day 4. I have done an inspection of my food supplies and have come to the conclusion that I only have enough left for 2 weeks if I eat 1 protein bar a day. That should be enough time for the potatoes to start producing. Day 5. I am conserving my energy as much as possible until the potatoes are ready. Day 6. I hate being hungry. I have decided it is one of the most uncomfortably annoying states a Bigfoot can be in. Day 7. No changes. I hope the potatoes come through. The corn has not sprouted, but the mango seems promising. I have 30 tally marks on the wall now. Everything is going well for being stuck on an uninhabited planet. The potatoes have produced their first crop, and I couldn't be happier. Who knew being a farmer could be so rewarding? I discovered that I can craft pieces of metal from the ship into pans so I can cook the potatoes and have them as French fries. I do miss salt and ketchup, but I am creative, so in time, I know I will think of something. The mango tree that has sprouted isn't a mango tree, but an ape fruit tree. I was delighted by my discovery. It gives me some small comfort from home. To keep my mind sharp, I have been exploring outside my cave. I watch the daily cycles of the moon. I'm trying to figure out how time works here and if there are seasons like there are on Earth. I believe my friends will come for me. I'm trying to figure out a way to send a message to them. I am working with materials from the ship, but I haven't figured out a way to contact them yet. Today I carved out my 365th tally mark. This is the last time I will use the tally system. I have figured out how to tell the days on Mars by its 2 moons. I call them Jack and Jill. To celebrate my 1-year anniversary on Mars, I decided to explore the southeastern part of the cave system. I have discovered that my cave is one of many in an intricate system that is below the large Marvin mountain range. I have explored this area on several occasions, but today I am going to go further than ever before. I can't wait to see what I discover. My year on Mars has taught me that there isn't anything I can't do. I took some supplies, water, and a rope I had made from my own hair. I don't have to wear my helmet in the cave system since there is oxygen that flows from below Mars' crust. I enjoyed looking at the stalagmites and the stalactites that run along the cave. Once I was deeper in the cave, I saw a new mineral sparkling on the cave ceiling. It was light blue and beautiful. I wanted to have a piece. Who knew what properties it might hold? It could even be the key to creating a communication system where I could reach my friends. I started to climb up the side of the cave, and just before I reached the mineral, I slipped on the wet stone, tumbled down the wall, slammed into a boulder, and rolled into a large ravine. I think I was knocked unconscious for a few minutes, and when I came to, my body was sore all over. I immediately tried to climb out of the ravine, but the walls were smooth and I began to panic. It's okay, Bob. You have been in situations like this before. Just think and figure a way out of it. I stopped and took a few deep breaths. My rope. It's in my backpack. I looked around and remembered that I had taken my backpack off before I tried to get the mineral and I couldn't climb back up to get it. I shouldn't have been so careless. I knew what to do on Mars in my area, but this was somewhere new. I should have paid more attention to my surroundings. I continued to sit in the ravine and think. I noticed a small trickle of water running at the bottom of the ravine and decided to follow it. I had been walking for several miles when I came to a pool of sparkling clear water. Steam was rising from the top. I decided to be more careful this time and took a few strands of my hair and placed them into the water. Nothing happened. I dipped my toe in first. It was warm, but not too hot. Bigfoots are naturally good swimmers and not afraid of the water. I plunged my whole body into the hot spring and let out a sigh of relief. This was blissful. It might even have been worth falling into the ravine for. I leaned against the wall of the pool and closed my eyes. This wasn't the worst way to celebrate my 1-year anniversary on Mars. I laughed to myself. This was the first bath I had taken all year. As I began to relax, my mind started helping me figure out a plan to get back home. I just needed to walk north to get back to my section of the cave system. I was feeling so much better by the time I got out of the hot spring. I shook myself off like a bear and was ready to get home. My theory was correct and I was home within no time. I went to my secret hiding place beside my 8-fruit tree and pulled out a chocolate candy bar I had been saving for this day. I threw myself onto the mud couch. I was so tired, but I was happy to be alive and that I had made it a whole year on Mars. I unwrapped the candy bar and took a bite. I could feel the tears forming in my eyes. I was doing okay on Mars, but it still wasn't Earth. I missed Earth and I missed my friends. I wonder how long it would be before I saw them again. Year 28. Mars was experiencing a month-long sandstorm and I have been unable to go outside. I would coin this feeling as sad, sandy all day. To keep my mind in high spirits, I have decided to make clay figures of my old friends to occupy my time. Luckily, the next morning the storm had finally cleared itself. I made my way to the mountaintops for my walk. I expected to feel better, but the month-long sandstorm had taken its toll on me. I was thinking that no one would find me on Mars. They don't even know that I'm here. I tried to stay calm by thinking about how capable my friends were and how humans always find a way to achieve the impossible. Heck, they went from flying what was essentially a kite to going into outer space in less than 70 years. At that rate, I'll be out of here in no time. Just as I was beginning to calm down a bit, I kicked a small rounded rock down the cliff's side. I watched it as it kept going and going until it eventually reached the bottom. I immediately panicked again. The will, an invention humans had been trying to perfect for thousands of years, and you still get a flat running over a pebble. Getting to Mars was too great of a challenge, and even if they made it, I would long be red dust in the wind. I laid down from the exhaustion of stress and closed my eyes. Not a moment had passed before I heard a sound from above. I watched the object descend to the surface and quickly as I could made my way down the mountainside. By the time I had reached the object, a small rover had appeared. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was only a moment later that it started up and began to move. I was so excited. However, my excitement was short-lived. The rover only made it a couple 100 feet before it died. For the next month or so, I would come back every day to check on it to see if it had moved. It never did, so I decided to take it back to my cave. I sat that evening in my mud chair, listening to the wind swirl outside. I glanced at the rover and smiled. This was the happiest month I've had in years, and for the first time in a while, I had hoped that one day I would make it back to Earth. Year 60. There have been a few more rovers since the first one landed. My favorite showed up 17 years ago. This was the first rover where I knew NASA was on the right track and that eventually people would come. It was a curious thing, always taking samples and trying to get to hard-to-reach places. Another rover has come since, but unfortunately it broke an axle during a sandstorm last year. It persevered for a few months, but eventually couldn't move anymore. Today is the day that my favorite rover friend has stopped working. I suspect it's the energy source that has simply burned out. I took another walk on the mountaintops that evening. This was the first time in a while that I couldn't see a rover down below. I will miss that little guy. but I was happy knowing that he must have helped countless people on the mission to make it to Mars. I looked up to the red sky and wondered what other new amazing creations would come to my home. Year 90. Things are bumping here on Mars. Humans landed a few years ago, and they are beginning to stay for longer stints, at least for research purposes. This morning came another supply ship. I poked my head over the hill to see what they were bringing to the station. I've been on Mars so long that just about everything is new to me. They began carrying what looked like a food storage unit, and through the little window on the side of it, I saw a box with a pizza on it. I knew I had to try and get that pizza. As if I were a robot being controlled, I made my way down to the station. Once I arrived, I snapped back into reality and asked myself what the heck I was doing. I turned around and began to walk back to my cave when one of the men said, "Hey, where do you think you're going? Everyone has to help. Come over here and give me a hand." I was worried that they would say something about my outdated spacesuit, but they must have been too busy to notice. I helped him carry the unit inside, and after I didn't want to push my luck, so I decided to leave as fast as I could. I was making my way outside when I walked past the kitchen, and sitting right on the counter was the frozen pizza. The temptation was too strong, so I went inside and grabbed the pizza. I was planning on getting out of there when I noticed the shiny chrome microwave. Images of gooey melted cheese filled my brain, and I tore the box open and put in the pizza. The timer was ticking down, and right when it reached 0, I heard a voice behind me. "I can't believe it. 2 minutes alone and the new guys are already causing trouble. Those are for special occasions. Finish up and help the guys outside." I had stuffed the hot pizza in my spacesuit out of fear, and the cheese was scalding my stomach. I ran outside and went straight towards my cave. 2 people called after me, but I just ignored them. "Heard the bathrooms were out again. Must be an emergency," said one of the guys. I made it back to my cave and peeled the pizza off my stomach. I had lost some cheese, but it still tasted amazing. On Earth, I never thought twice when eating a pizza, but when you go 90 years without one, you realize how you take the little things for granted. I spent the rest of the evening watching the humans do more preparations. I hoped I hadn't caused too much trouble. I was tinkering with my communication watches as I enjoyed the last bits of cheese from my fur. Year 100. Another ship from NASA has landed, and this one is big. I think it is a full-time space center now. I have been talking to the clay figures in my cave a lot more lately. I'm trying to pass as a human again if need be. I know my friends will find me soon. I was out gathering a few supplies from the new recruits when I saw another spaceship land far away from the station. It must have been a rocky entry for them. I thought it looked like the one I arrived here in 100 years ago, but it has been so long that I am not sure I remember what it looks like. I went back to my cave and saw the ship outside. It was empty. Whoever they were had gone into my cave. I picked up one of the many large sand-colored rocks and investigated. I hoped they were friendly. I saw large shadows on the wall, and I was glad I brought my rock. These might be some creatures of Mars that I was just discovering after all this time. I let out a growl and ran into the cave with my rock. "Hey, Bob, long time no see," said Skunk. I dropped my rock. "Are you really here? How?" I touched Bigfoot's fur with my fingertips and stepped back. Were these my friends? Were they real? Or had I simply imagined my clay figures come to life? "It's us. We finally found you," Bigfoot said. I couldn't believe it. I jumped into his arms and we hugged. I thought I might never see you all again. I hugged Skunk, Yeti, and then Karen. "I'm so happy to see you. They were actually here." I burst into tears. I couldn't hold back the joy anymore. My friends were here. They hadn't forgotten me, and I was going home.